Hola amigos, ¿cómo está? Yo soy muy bien. English Dan. Here it is, the middle of July 2020, and I know I've been promising a shop tour of Dan's tiny little woodworking shop. So here we are, shop tour 2020. The first, but probably not the last. So you may ask yourself, why, pray tell, are you sitting up in your mezzanine, Dan? Well, let me tell you. It's because from this vantage point, I get a clear view of my 18-foot by 17-foot shop, and I got a really good idea on how to lay out tools and spacing and all that kind of stuff. Keeping in mind, I want to be able to work on an 8-foot piece of material here, and an 8-foot piece of material here, and 8-foot, and you get the point. But having all of the blades clustered around the middle of the shop was a very important factor, and one that I could get a better idea of or understand from getting the bird's eye view a little bit better. So a little bit of background information on some of the tool selections and choices that I have made. There's a few factors that went into my thought process. Number one was budget. I didn't have a large budget, so I couldn't go out and buy all the biggest high-end tools that I could possibly find. Plus, the small 17 by 18 room wouldn't allow for that. So, budget being one thing, I didn't have a small budget. So, with that in mind, I was going to buy quality tools that were going to last me a long time. So I did a lot of research into all of the tools that were available out there, and thanks to all the folks on YouTube that really love tools and really like to talk about their tools, I was able to make an informed decision about a lot of my tools and equipment. So definitely not low end. These things got to last me till the rest of my life, another couple decades, I hope. Availability of tools and equipment was another factor. Here in northern British Columbia, we don't exactly have a big box store that I can go to and say, yep, I'll have one of those and one of those and one of those. So a lot of the equipment that I've had to order, I've actually had to order. So there's been a couple of good sources for me. Our local lumber store is a King Industrial Tool dealer, so I've got a few pieces of their equipment. And Lee Valley sells Rikon tools, and they ship, or in the case of most of my tools, I made a tool run one summer and traveled about 1,500 kilometers to get the tools up and back, and I got most of them all in one shot. So those are two of the biggest brands that I use, King Industrial and Rikon. I found them to be very good quality, reliable tools. I haven't had very many issues. One broken part that was broken shipping, but other than that, it's just been really, really good so far. No problem. Just another quick note on tools and quality. For instance, Festool is definitely not an entry-level brand of equipment. They can get quite costly. However, I do have two pieces of their equipment, so I'll talk about those when I'm doing the tour. I don't know if I've mentioned yet, but I'm a machine tool kind of woodworker. I really hope to get into more of the hybrid type woodworking where we use a lot more hand tools in the future. But for now, I got to hone those skills on the big machines. As everybody knows, table saw is the heart of the system, and so that's why my heart of the system is in the middle of my shop, and I'm still able to cut 4x8 pieces of plywood quite easily. This is a King Canada 10-inch cabinet type table saw. It's 3 horsepower, so it cuts through 8/4 Purple Heart with ease. I got a few features on this saw that I find quite handy, and I'm very glad that I got. The slide attachment on the saw is what allows me to do a lot of cutting plywood, and because I hate chasing plywood on the floor, my knees hurt too much, and I don't have that luxury of space in my shop. So this slider attachment has been, as far as I'm concerned, a really good investment. So if you're thinking of getting a table saw, that slider table is just slicker than cat poo on a linoleum floor. When I bought the table saw, I also bought the added feature of the extended table, which houses the router table. So my router is permanently attached underneath there. And it's really handy and useful. The only thing that I don't like about it is the fact that I can't put a router lift in there. I'd love to have a router lift, but I also love the fact that this table saw with the extension has so much capacity now, and allows me to work on those 4x8 sheets of plywood and such as a lot of the larger material that I need to cut. So if you've got the heart of the system being the table saw, you got to have something to work on, and a workbench was the very next piece of furniture that I built for the shop. Now this bench, which also serves as an outfeed table for the table saw, this bench is a work in progress. So this was a weekend project. It's worked out very well. All it is basically 2 pieces of 3/4 inch material, MDF and plywood, sandwiched on top of a frame. So as you can see, there's a little bit of junk storage underneath the bench, which I hate junk storage. And it's not junk storage, it's perfectly good usable tools that I use all the time, but it's just not very neat and tidy. So a nice cabinet set of drawers will go under there eventually. So in the top I use the 3/4 inch dog holes, and I have some in the side also, as well as a wood vise mounted to the end of the worktop. One thing that I do, and it's a personal thing, a lot of people have a lot of clamp racks and a lot of clamps. Well, I'm just starting out and I have to get more clamps, I know that, but one thing that I really like to do is have my clamps easily and readily at hand. That's why they're just mounted to the end of my bench. I like them there, I can grab them real easy. So if the table saw is the heart of the system, then obviously the lungs of the system has to be dust extraction. This is King Industrial 2 horsepower dust extractor. It's worked well. The ease of use, well, maybe not so much. One thing that I really hate about this thing is that, as you can see, I'm a bit of a dust nitpicky fanatic, and this bag on the bottom here, no matter how much you try, doesn't seal very well. So I obviously use some tuck tape and seal it up much better. All my tools extract dust really, really well. There's another design thing as I was sitting up in the mezzanine there on up high, surveying my kingdom, looking down upon my future world. One of the things that I had to deal with was this post. Now this shop, when I originally got here, was basically a slab, 4 walls, and a collapsed roof. So this vaulted ceiling wasn't here. In order to vault the ceiling, I had to put in a couple of posts, because at that point this wasn't going to be a woodworking shop. However, the post has created some challenges, but also some interesting opportunities. When we're talking about dust extraction, it allowed me to run some of the piping and hide some of the piping down the back side of the wall. So the dust extraction for the table saw, my jointer, also for my thickness planer, I hook it up to a portable hose, and this one also acts as a dust extraction for the router table. The other thing that I pondered as I'm placing tools sitting up on the mezzanine up high there is the fact that which tools am I going to run dust extraction to? Which ones is it necessary? So I tried to get them all in the same area to limit my piping that I have to extend. So basically all along that wall, this wall, and down the center beam is all my tools are serviced from that simple little system of piping. Looks like a bit of an octagon spider. The only thing that I don't have serviced by my dust extraction system is my lathe. And as you all know, lathes tend to kick up not so much fine dust, but that heavy, thicker dust. It's a sweeping and a portable vacuum job on that particular lathe itself. So we may as well start from the beginning of the manufacturing process in the typical process, starting off with the chop saw. So this is the Makita model 1019. I chose this one. There was a few options that I could have had, but I chose this one because of some of the features on it. It is a very powerful 10-inch saw, granted. I looked at both the Festool Capex and the Bosch Glide. The thing that really drew me to this particular saw was the fact that I could control everything from the front. So pretty close to zero clearance against the wall. Everything, like I say, is controlled from the front, both for the angle, which locks into place and has several preset detents. But the beauty of it was I didn't have to reach behind or do anything like that to do the angles on it. The control is right here on the front, so I can do my tilts right here from the front and then lock it into position. Price point was good too. It was a little bit cheaper than both, well, comparable to the Bosch Glide, but significantly cheaper to the Capex. So when I originally got the saw, I had it set up on the factory stand. I made a video about creating my cabinet here. So this cabinet, the way that I designed it, there is no fence because like I subscribe to the ideology that the fence on the saw is your true indicator of square and where it should be set up to. I did, however, put in the top a nice sliding stop so that I can make repetitive cuts. This has worked out really well, so I've got good support from material 8 feet from the wall in that direction. The only other thing that I use is a little stand that I keep right handy, and this is set up to the height of the outfeed table at all times. If I have anything that I need to hang off that side of the saw, I just quickly grab this and set it up. The one option I would have liked to have gotten with the saw is the actual laser beam indicator for a cut line. Unfortunately, that model wasn't available when I bought the saw, and it would have taken a couple months to get it. So I just want a tool with a frickin' laser beam attached to it. So next up in the milling process is typically a venture to the jointer. This is my King Canada Industrial KCXF 85FX 8-inch helical head jointer. This is the latest addition to my fleet of machinery tools, and I've really enjoyed it and really liked it. I had an old benchtop 6-inch straight knife jointer before, and it just did not cut the mustard because the bed wasn't long enough, and trying to get true and accurate edging and facing was near to impossible with it. I would highly recommend a minimum size 8-inch with a long bed. The one thing I do have to say, when I first got this thing, it actually had a bad faulty motor in it. It took me 4 months of agony dealing with King Industrial trying to get this motor replaced. They sent the wrong one and things like that. And I have to tell you, I'm not one to about bashing products, but King Canada, man, you got to step up to the plate a little bit better than that after paying so much money and 4 months of agony trying to deal with it. I have to say, having helical heads, now that I've experienced, they're so quiet, they're so smooth, an awesome addition to any piece of equipment. Talking about helical cutting knives, which I don't quite have in my Dewalt DW 735 planer yet, but I will one day when these ones wear out. So I've been using these for over a year, and I've only had to just recently change the spare blades. This is one piece of equipment that I think Dewalt has absolutely nailed, because when I first started watching YouTube videos, this particular unit was in every single shop that I looked at, and pretty much everybody uses it. Space-wise, because I got a small shop, and also portability. So I put this on a stand, which I found at the local free store. Having it on a mobile stand allows me to work on the bench and also cut the big stuff on the table saw just by moving this out of the way. It's directly plumbed into my dust extraction system on a hose that I can take on and off whenever I need it. So this is another in the line of my Rikon tools from Lee Valley. The 70-220 VSR variable speed lathe. This has been an underutilized tool in my estimation, in that I really like to do more of it. and in future I will be doing more of it. The other thing that I'm really proud of, the second piece of shop furniture that I built, was this stand. So the stand was designed and built and inspired by a piece of furniture that I saw in a winery in the Okanagan region in BC a couple summers ago. I really like the trestle design of it. One thing you'll notice, it has a very low profile to the wall, so it doesn't take up much space in the shop. So you have to ask yourself, Dan, that's got to be a pretty tippy piece of equipment. But I designed it and put in some features that basically I have some pipe work which kind of look interesting, and actually attaches it to the wall, and so it makes the lathe very stable. I've had some big pieces of wood. In fact, I've maxed out this particular lathe, and it has vibrated, but nothing has ever shook loose. I've also designed my tool holders in the end, so you can see all of my shapers and the gouges all sit in the end of the actual bench itself. The sharpening station for all of my lathe chisels consists of a Rikon low-speed bench grinder. I have a couple of attachments, the Wolverine jigs to get the proper angles. I do use a diamond grit wheel on here for pretty good and accurate sharpening of all of my lathe chisels. This here be my Rikon 1410-326 14-inch bandsaw. It's been another good quality tool by Rikon. Really enjoyed using it. One thing that I did get extra with it is the roller stand. So I put it on wheels so that at any given time I can just drag it out from the wall to give me a little bit extra clearance. Sometimes the dust extraction system will get in the way if I'm cutting a wider board. Saw's been great for, I run a 3/4 inch blade and do resaw on it. I haven't done a lot of it, but it has worked. Very little blade drift. I follow a lot of the YouTube folks that give a lot of good tips on how to set up your bandsaw to decrease drift. The only thing that I wish I had in the bandsaw range was another smaller bandsaw. Changing the blades on the bandsaw is easy enough, but it's still time consuming, especially when you're doing bandsaw boxes and you want to flip from resaw to cutting curves and all the rest of that. So if space permitted, which it doesn't, I would get myself a second smaller bandsaw. So another item I picked up just by chance, I was having some difficulties cutting the drawer fronts on my cabinets that I've been building, the sanding station and the miter saw cabinet. I had a very specific design that I wanted to use. The only way that I could do it was to use a scroll saw. So this is a 16-inch variable speed scroll saw. I paid $75 for it, and the thing is absolutely gorgeous. And they don't look like a very sturdy tool, but they get the job done. I like it. Okay, getting into the sanding end of the operation here. I've got a couple of devices from Rikon. Both these sanders seem to fit the bill quite suitably for all of my sanding purposes. The first one is the 6x48 belt and 10-inch combination disc sander. Yeah, it cuts down material pretty quickly. And the other one is the oscillating spindle sander. And again, for getting into those inside tight curves, the oscillating spindle sander works very well. I got both of these items plumbed into the dust extraction system. That seems to work very well. There is still some fine dust that does escape, but that's par for the course. I built these little cabinets, so what that does is it allows me to move the sanders at any given time. So if I have a piece of longer material or odd material that quite won't make it around the bandsaw or around the compressor, I can move them out. There's enough flexibility in the dust extraction system so that I can manipulate them around a little bit. As well as show you my newest addition to my system, air compressor. Air compressor is a 5-horse, 2-stage, capable of delivering up to 175 psi. Yep, overkill for a little wood shop. However, I also have this unit plumbed outside, as well as on a hose reel that reaches throughout the shop. And the reason why I have it plumbed outside is that I used to be an automotive body mechanic and a painter. And in order to keep up with some of the standards and equipment that we use for refinishing cars and Suburbans, you have to have this volume of air. So overkill for a wood shop, but Gotta have it for some of the stuff that I do. Another relatively new addition to the shop is a Rikon 12-inch drill press. So I really like this thing. I got the table with it. It's hooked up to dust extraction, even though it doesn't create that much dust, but I had the dust extraction running through here anyway, so may as well use it. The really cool thing about this tool is it's got a frickin' laser beam attached to it. And it's variable speed, adjustable by a bar on the side of the machine. So I don't have to lift it and change pulleys. It's just an external adjustment. So that's a really good feature if you're going to invest in any of the variable speed type of drill presses. To maintain clearance for the miter saw and any material that would come on top of the stand and the bench here is I basically took the base and rotated it 90 degrees so that we have that clearance. It's bolted down to the tabletop, so it's nice and sturdy. It's not going anywhere. Good thinking, Dan. So I mentioned a little earlier that budget is always a concern for all woodworkers, but there's times when I believe in blowing the budget. Festool has a couple of tools that I've invested in that I believe that are top-notch and well worth the investment. Number one is the domino jointer, and I've built all kinds of things using the domino jointer. Everything from my lathe stand back there, which was an intricate project to put together. The other piece of Festool equipment that I have is a Festool Rotex sander. These things are phenomenal. When you lock them up, they engage a lockup system there, and they cut so fast. It's just like using a belt sander without all of the damage of a belt sander. When you unlock them, they cut very fine, and they do a great job of finish work. The other thing that I've got on the bottom there is a little vacuum system. The dust extraction works extremely well, especially compared to some of the other competitors that I've used. The sander almost sticks to the wall when you have it on full power. I've subscribed to Rigid. They seem to have a very good line of tools. I've had nothing break. I've had nothing break down. And one set of batteries powers a lot of different tools, from drills, drivers, to little hand routers. So if you have any questions or comments about my shop, any of the tools that I use, some of the processes, feel free to send me a message in the comment section below. I'll answer them for sure. And please subscribe. Please ring the bells and do everything else that all the YouTube people need in order for us to survive. Thank you for watching. Hoi Woody. Thank you for watching. Oh! Shop dogs. What a pain. You want to see something sketchy? Don't try this at home. How come we always say that before we hurt ourselves? Don't tell my wife I did that.